Hello everybody. Between my usual hangouts and the local Comic Con, it was a pretty good weekend for picking up some comics and horror books. So we're just going to go through a quick overview of what we ran into. So starting with two of these hardcover Tales from the Crypt revival things. Now, I don't really know anything about the history of what these are, so best as I can tell, in the late 2000s, some company tried to revive Tales from the Crypt. It doesn't seem like it made it very far. Like, I know there are 5 of these, and I'd only ever seen them in softcover before. So I found 2 and 4. I found one, a really long time ago, and so now I'm kind of looking for the last 2. But I read the first one, and they were okay. They're not as good as like the original Tales from the Crypt, but honestly, nothing ever will be. But they're pretty worth your time to read if you manage to stumble across them. So I was pretty happy about that. So one of our more exciting things from the Comic Con was I found this at a booth. So this is the Reanimator comic adaptation, which if you have Arrow Video's Deluxe Limited Reanimator release, uh, the comic that comes in here, that's this. So it's just kind of nice to have like the real thing. Plus, it was surprisingly cheap, so I think the cover art alone is probably worth it because it's pretty awesome. So we got some more modern horror here. So Jeepers Creepers had a pretty good series come out. So Dynamite put out a Pumpkinhead and a Jeepers Creepers series, which I hope to eventually talk about with uh, some of the comics people I know. So that's been kind of in the works for an awful long time, but we're getting there. So now I've read this series, and the story they come up with for the Creeper, like they're kind of there's kind of only so much you can do with the Creeper without spoiling the Creeper, but I think they do an okay job. Like it's a fairly cool story about some guy trying to track the Creeper down, and I guess I can't really get it too much into it without spoiling the thing. So check it out. So regardless of what you think of Victor Salva, who is a not a good guy, and also vile creep. So I know this was another Comic Con find. Uh, so I'm pretty sure this is one of the '90s reissue Tales from the Crypt, which I haven't taken out of the wrapper to really like look at it yet. But you know, I was able to find it. Well, it was only $1, so yeah. Which I don't know if it has any actual value because it was in the dollar bin, but at the same time, it's still really cool, and it's a lot of fun to just to actually have like a comic to read when you're going through Tales from the Crypt rather than just like a bunch of digital files. So we've got some new Tales from the Crypt and an old Tales from the Crypt. I have another one or two of these. I think the one I have is like Vault of Horror, and it's a pretty fun retro feel to go through some of those stories like that. And then as for value, so this was in the case at one of my local haunts, and usually I don't really have anything good there, but they totally blew me away with this Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash #2. So for those of you who don't know, that was a really insane crossover that saw Freddy and Jason fighting Ash. Uh, a lot of people didn't exactly love the story, like they thought it was like cheesy or something. But I loved this story so much anyway. Like I had so much fun with it that I really didn't care about any of the holes with the writing or the setup, or I mean, none of it mattered. I just had an amazing time with it. Uh, and so issues of this are kind of hard to come by. Like usually a lot of comics have fairly low like resale value. This is one of the ones that's kind of consistently like $8 to $10. Uh, and what's cool about this one is it's done by the cover artist, I think Eric Powell, and it even came with like a little thing, so you can see where it first got signed at. Which this was in somebody's collection for quite a long time. It looks like. Maybe my camera's picking it up. Uh, which it's kind of, you know, when I go to C2E2 in a few weeks, maybe I can find out some more about that. Or get some more signatures, because despite all of its flaws, I love this series. So, and then, well, that's it for the comics that we found. So, now let's move on to convention art, which is also kind of a really fun thing to do. Well, you have to kind of be careful when you're collecting prints, because you can go overboard pretty fast. I mean, you've seen the wall in many of my in my most recent wave of videos, so we're kind of running out of room for stuff, which sort of hampered our buying process, but, well, here we go. So first up we have this, which was at a comics booth. So this isn't necessarily a print per se, but this is the cover art for the Toxic Avenger series that came out way back in, I think, the early 90s. Because I have this issue somewhere. I just don't remember that much about it. But it's signed by the cover artist. This didn't have a COA, but the guy seemed pretty trustworthy. Plus, like, getting a closer look at the signature, like, it doesn't look printed on or anything. So I'm like 95% sure it's legit from the way that it kind of like distorts in the light. So that was a pretty cool find for, I think this was only $10, so yeah. So plus I think I get to meet Lloyd again, so I might have him sign this, which would just be great. So it kind of set the tone for a bunch of the cool art that we ended up finding. So this next one, so when I buy a print from somebody, I like to have them sign it and then get their card, so I can kind of, like, when people are like, hey, where'd you get that? You know, share that information with people. It's sort of hard to explain. So when I went to this guy's booth, like, this really stuck out at me, because it's like, oh wow, that's such a cool concept. You know, like the new Pennywise and the old Pennywise. However, apparently the artist, it's like a team kind of thing. So like this guy and his brother like both had art there, but the guy who did this specific print wasn't there to sign it, which was disappointing. But you know, hey, I'll probably run into him again since it seems like they were pretty frequent congoers. I did manage to lose their card, but they have kind of a icon there, which hopefully you can read better than me on my monitor. Tyrene Carver and Will Woods. MuseTapStudios.com. So they had a bunch of other. Typically, with a lot of these things, most of the art you see, if you're not at a horror convention, is just like standard kind of like pop culture-y things, which a lot of which I'm not really a fan of that. So whenever I see like a good art, it really sticks out to me, and I just thought this was like so cool. Kind of a similar, although very different story behind this one though. So this one was by somebody named Cameron Johnson. So I'm just gonna plug him real quick here. So I was walking by his booth, and he had a, I think, did he have a Freddy? Well, he had a Leatherface and a Michael Myers, and I think he had a Freddy and a Jason too, and he had like the coolest Michael Myers print I had ever seen, like done in kind of like this sort of minimalist yet really highly detailed style. Like, it was awesome. However, if I got it, it would have been maybe my 12th Michael Myers print, and enough was enough. Like, I needed some variety. But if I change my mind, woo, I know where I can get one. You should too. But, normally, the Pokemon fan art is really tacky and undignified, I'm just gonna say. But I really liked this because it has a more professional feel to it, like, and just like a more serious attitude. It's hard to describe in words, but I really like that print for that reason. And then the last person I ended up buying art from was, so a little bit of background. So I ran into this guy a while ago at one of the first conventions I went to, and he had this really amazing like Pennywise print. I ended up buying that, and so every time I look at it, it's like, man, I wish that guy had had more prints. Actually, you know what? Give me a second. I had to go take it down off the wall. So, the last time I met that guy, I got that from him, which, again, it's like it is not very often you see like a really well done piece of like fan art, kind of like that. But this just like blew me away. Like, plus, I don't know if you can really tell, it's printed on some kind of like canvas board sort of thing, so it actually has texture too. And like, I just love that. And so I've had that on my wall for about a year and a half. And every time I go to one of these things, it's like, oh man, I wonder if that guy's gonna be there again. Like I tried to go to his website, and there weren't a whole lot of prints on his website. Uh, but he was actually there this time, and I got to like hang out with him briefly and pick up quite a few things from him, since I like loved his style so much. So his name's Oval Flowers. I think his website is, I think it's like artofophel.com. To my embarrassment, I sort of lost his card yet again, but I'm gonna try to link it in the description. So this was a sketchbook that I got from his table too, with just a bunch of the different like things that he does, which all of it's like pretty detailed. Like you can tell he puts like a ton of work into it. Or, oh, okay, yeah, there's his info. Woo. So, and he seems to kind of do everything ranging from like horror to Godzilla to just whatever that particular anime was. One of the things that's cool about him is that, like, in his portfolio, he has like a bunch of art for horror things that I've never seen anybody do prints of before, or like fan art for before. Like, he had a really cool inking. He had a really cool like ink of the troll from Cat's Eye, and I was like, oh wow, it's that thing from Cat's Eye. And he's like, you're the first person who's ever realized what that was. It's like, wow. So I don't know what's quite going on. So I'm gonna start with I got 2 prints and then 2 originals from him. So we're gonna start with the prints. So he had these at his table for 5. I mean, I kind of told myself, no more art of just the same characters over and over and over again. But like he was having kind of a sale going on, so this is only $5, and just like look at like the detail and like the quality. I mean, it's like a giant comic panel, and like I've been saying, like a lot of times, like the fan art for these characters just looks kind of like tacky, like something has to really get my attention. But like this is spectacular. Like I love this. So that was our first print that we got. And the second print was he did a Little Shop of Horrors with Seymour and Audrey, and it looks a little squished because the original was like a different dimension. So I actually got to see the original art in his portfolio, and it's kind of a large like piece. So they had to kind of it a little bit to get it to fit into the 11 by 17, but it still looks awesome. Like, and I mean, I've never even seen Little Shop of Horrors fan art before that wasn't like weird pop mass produced. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but like I loved this. This was great, and this was also only like $5 he was having that sale. And I was even able to get some of his original art pretty cheaply. So he did this amazing drawing of Sam from Trick or Treat. Like, look at that. Like, I mean, yes, it's kind of the normal like pose that you see Sam in, but just like the whole thing, like the colors, the detail, like all of it is so great. Like, I was blown away when he told me this never became a print because it's just like so beautiful and vivid. I mean, I have a lot of art already with Sam from Trick or Treat, but I don't even care. I'm gonna take some of it down because that is just like gorgeous and spectacular. And it was only 20 bucks too. And then this is the big thing that I was excited to get from him. So when I first ran into him a while ago, so he does Godzilla art too. So he had a bunch of pages of some of the different kaiju, as well as Godzilla himself. He had a really cool Ghidorah, uh, but the one I was most interested in was, like, my favorite Godzilla monster is Destroya, and he did this sketch. He had this sketch of Destroya up when I met him the last time, and I was like, oh my god, I love that. Like, when are you getting prints of that? Oh, prints are coming soon. It's like, okay, great. And so I had been waiting, like, to see him at other conventions, like, hey, did the prints come out yet? Or, you know, I check his website, hey, did the prints come out yet? And, like, it was kind of heartbreaking. So it's like, hey, did you ever make prints of that Destroya? And he was like, you know, you're the only person who's ever asked for prints of it. And I was like, you can't be serious. It was almost like I was being like rooked or something. It's like, what do you mean people don't like that? Like, how does that not blow your mind? Uh, but so I ended up buying the original art off him, and it is so awesome. Like, I really wish it was colorized, because I think it would look even better. But you know, he did a good enough job with the shading. You can kind of make it out a little bit. So especially if you're as familiar with Destroya as I am. And so this is an 11 by 17. I think it was 50. Um, which, I mean, for an original piece of art, like, that's great. Like, if it had been colorized, I think I maybe would have paid like 30 for a print of it. But no, we got the original, and it kind of made my con. So it's a bit of a shame that there will never be prints of it, but you know, I'm just really happy to own it, and hopefully he does some more. So uh, that's pretty much everything we picked up at that con. Uh, so if I can find the links for the other artists that we found stuff from, I'll throw them into the description. For now, this guy, who still has, I think he still has a few different Godzilla prints. So he had a really good Final Wars Gigan that was pretty intense. Let's see, what else did he have? He had this really sweet Ghidorah that I came very close to buying. It was like I could either afford the Sam or the Ghidorah, and I went with Sam because, like, oh my god, look at that. And yeah, hopefully I'm not alone in my love of this art style, and you guys can go show him some support. So, well, we'll be back later. Like, share, and subscribe, and I hope I didn't rattle on too long. So, come back soon.